Before we start, a quick warning. This episode will describe traumatic events, including self-harm. Listener discretion is advised.
Last month, I drove to Alabama by myself for Parents' Weekend to see my daughter in college.
That's Dana, a 47-year-old mom. It may seem like a small thing, driving to see your daughter in college, but for Dana, it's a milestone.
And this was the first time in 3 years that I packed up my car and took off by myself to go enjoy my kid. And I had a great time, and I never felt like apprehensive or like I needed to be at home and let's hurry up and get this over with. I really enjoyed it.
Depression's been in Dana's life for over 35 years, but now she's emerged out of her depression thanks to ketamine treatment.
It's given me back my life, my job. I'm able to function and take care of my kids and make memories with them and take care of myself.
This is the story of how Dana and 2 other people found a way out of depression and anxiety and transformed their everyday lives with ketamine therapy. Welcome to Free Your Mind, the Mindbloom podcast. In this show, we're going to demystify ketamine treatment. We want to know the science behind the hype and the human reality behind the hope. I'm Nate Toby, your host. Ketamine is not a new drug. It's been used as an anesthetic since 1963. It was first approved by the FDA for these purposes back in 1970. It was used on the battlefields of Vietnam for emergency surgery. In 1985, it was named an essential medicine by the World Health Organization. Now it's being used as medicine for the mind, heralded as the biggest breakthrough in depression treatment since antidepressants first came out.
More research is being done on ketamine. This is a general...
But researchers have known about the antidepressant effect of ketamine for a long time. First, clinicians began noticing that after giving their patients ketamine for anesthesia or pain, some experienced an improvement in mood too. This led to research into ketamine's potential for depression, with the first randomized trial being published by researchers at Yale in 2000. Since then, hundreds of studies have validated the safety and effectiveness of ketamine in treating depression and anxiety. Mindbloom has become the world's leading company providing clinician-directed ketamine therapy for anxiety and depression. After a psychiatric screening and intake process, the clinician prescribes clients ketamine for a scheduled series of at-home treatments. Ketamine comes in the form of lozenges that dissolve in your mouth. Here's how it works. A Mindbloom guide checks in with you on Zoom before your series of treatments, and they require a trusted person in your home to be there to provide support and ensure a comfortable environment during each treatment. Mindbloom also provides coaching to help clients apply the realizations they experience to their daily lives. Many ketamine providers run in-person clinics, but Mindbloom's at-home approach makes it more accessible to more people. And the results are exciting. In a study of 1,200 Mindbloom clients who experienced depression and anxiety, after just 4 ketamine treatments, 89% reported some improvement, 63% reported a big improvement, and 33% said they're not depressed anymore at all. These results are a big deal. The rates of improvement are better than what we see in studies of antidepressants. But how exactly does it work? We're going to focus on answering 2 big questions in this episode. First, what's happening in the brain during ketamine therapy? And second, what is it actually like to experience ketamine?
I tend to ramble, go off a lot with a lot of stuff. So by all means, kind of cut me off or, whatever you need to do.
You're great. Don't worry. If we need to cut you off, I will. The guy you hear me talking to is Stephen Roderick. He's a former nurse with sincere eyes, infectious enthusiasm, and an unmistakable sweetness. Tell me about yourself a little more. What do you do for fun? What are your hobbies?
I like to vacation because growing up, we didn't take a lot of vacations and do a lot of stuff like that. And when, I met my spouse, we got me into the whole Disney thing. So we travel a lot with Disney.
When Steven's not on a Disney cruise or staying at a Disney resort with his husband, you can find him in Easton, Pennsylvania. It's a small city of about 20,000 people where healthcare is the dominant industry. Steven's 43, and he's devoted much of his life to helping people. He was an ER nurse for 3 years. Now he works in healthcare IT, but he keeps his nursing certificates current. He says he's an ER nurse to the core.
As a nurse, I look back now and a part of me is ashamed, sort of, and I'm regretful, but at the same time, I can't change the past.
As an ER nurse, Steven often worked with people suffering from mental illness, and he ended up saying the same thing a lot.
Keep taking the meds, take those meds. Everything is going to be fine. You will be fixed. Everything will work out. Keep taking your meds. Keep taking your meds.
Keep taking your meds. Keep taking your antidepressants, the pills that are supposed to help you combat depression. But Steven was saying things that he was secretly struggling with himself.
I was dying inside and I was suffering from a lot of the same thing. But what am I supposed to do? As a nurse, I have to be strong and I have to be there for that patient.
Steven had been fighting a hidden battle with crippling panic attacks and depression ever since he was a kid. When he was 18, he was prescribed his first antidepressant, Wellbutrin, but he had terrible side effects. Then it was Zoloft, until that stopped working. It just left him spiraling from one antidepressant to the next.
I think I've been on meds all my adult life, probably more than half of my life so far.
He's tried Xanax, Effexor, Paxil, Celexa, Lexapro, Pristique, Vibrant, amitriptyline.
It's literally like treading water. Is it going to be an anxiety-filled day? Is it going to be a depression-filled day where I'm going to fall down in the slumps and not be able to just function and not want to get out of bed? I'm a child sex abuse trauma survivor. So a lot of that stems from that. I've spent years just kind of sucking it up and trudging through it. As I got older to be an adult, I think it got worse. I have a good 1 to 2 years on meds where they seem to work, quote unquote, maybe, or I was making them feel like they were working. And then I would have a moment where I would just crash. Either I would have a huge panic attack and freak out, and then I would just go downhill, or it would just get really dark and really, really bad inside my head. And I'd go even further down and just kind of sink into this deep, dark place that I just couldn't get myself out of.
Some of you might know your own dark place like this, or love someone who does. I can relate. What's actually happening to the brain in these dark places?
It's important to understand how depression and other stress or trauma-related psychiatric disorders impact the brain.
Kristen Arden has a doctorate in psychiatric nursing and has worked in the mental health field for the past 20 years. When I asked Dr. Arden about how depression and other stress or trauma-related psychiatric disorders impact the brain, she points me to the relationship between cortisol and the amygdala. Cortisol is a hormone that helps our body respond to danger. So let's say Steven's attacked by a lion. Unlikely, I know. His brain will tell his body it's under attack, and then his body releases cortisol, activating his fight or flight response. It also suppresses his immune system, so all the body's energy can be directed to running from the lion. And it even enhances his memory so that Steven will vividly remember and learn from the traumatic lion attack. You get the picture. Basically, increasing cortisol to your brain helps your body survive in a world of lions. But if you're constantly being attacked by lions, or in Steven's case, trying to hide panic attacks at work, it starts to physically change your brain for the worse.
So cortisol impacts the development of the neurons in your brain. So what that does is it leads to a shrinkage of brain circuits, which then reduces overall functions. When those certain areas of your brain shrink, the amygdala also enlarges.
Your amygdala is where your fight or flight response lives. As your amygdala gets bigger, your fight or flight responses get bigger too. The stress starts changing your brain, fueling panic attacks, which worsen depression. It can become a hellish cycle. 1,000 miles south of Steven in West Palm Beach, Florida, Dana Wolford is experiencing her own version of that cycle. What is something that you do for fun?
I used to paddleboard and hike and four-wheel and fish and all sorts of outdoor stuff because, it's hot here year-round. We can pretty much do anything we want to do except for ski.
Dana's got a big smile and a warm laugh. She loves being a mom. Everybody says they love their kids, but Dana loves her kids. When she talks about her family, it's like the Brady Bunch.
I've got 3 kids and 2 step kids and 4 dogs.
But for much of her life, depression has hung like a cloud over everything she did.
Most of the time it was that I just didn't want to be alive anymore and I felt terrible. And when I was awake, I would think about things that I didn't want to think about. And sleeping was the solution to not thinking, to not processing anything, to not seeing all of the things that I wasn't doing or couldn't do. And unfortunately, sleep was the closest to death that I could get.
Dana started feeling depressed when she was around 11 or 12 years old. She was 26 when she was first prescribed an antidepressant. She's been on and off them for the past 20 years. You may be hearing a theme here. Antidepressants can be a lifesaver for some people, but they only work for about half the people who try them. And of those, another half will experience side effects that might lead them to stop. The thing is, let's say you're lucky. You find an antidepressant, it works, you don't have any intense side effects, but over time, there's a good chance it could stop working. That's exactly what would happen to Stephen and Dana again and again. Eventually, Stephen was ready to give up. He started missing work, mostly due to crippling migraines. Despite his depression, he'd push himself to go to work, to see friends, to go on vacations. But to him, it all felt like a lie.
Things went south really quick. I had a lot of not good thoughts. I didn't want to live anymore, honestly.
Dana was up against the same wall.
I'd get my kids up for school and drop them off and go back home and go back to bed. And that was pretty much the bane of my existence. I had a lot of suicidal ideation and was probably the lowest I've ever experienced in my entire life.
As Dana was just numbly going through her life, her friend Gloria reached out. Dana opened up with her about her suffering, and Gloria told her about ketamine. At first, Dana was like, no, thank you. But when Gloria saw Dana continue to spiral, she took a more assertive step.
She ran a GoFundMe to pay for Mindbloom for me. She had been telling me ketamine is amazing. It will change your life.
A GoFundMe campaign? One hell of a friend, am I right? A friend of Stephen's also brought up the idea of ketamine.
I know what it's like giving it in the ER to patients. So, and I thought I would just kind of take the plunge with it, so I delved a little bit more and researched.
When you were thinking about ketamine, what were you nervous about? Like, why didn't you want to do it?
I was genuinely fearful of ketamine because all my brain could think about was they use this as an anesthesia. And that was all I could think of was like, I'm going to be put under and I'm not going to know what's going on.
So what's going on when your brain is experiencing ketamine? When you Google ketamine, the technical definition comes up first. A quote, dissociative anesthetic that can have hallucinogenic effects. Okay, so what's that mean? Well, it translates as ketamine is a medicine that numbs pain and can create a sense of detachment from your body, mind, and surroundings, as well as vivid imagery and sensations. Okay, and now the million-dollar question. How exactly is the brain benefiting from ketamine treatment? The short answer is that it appears to be repairing the damage from stress and opening a window for regrowth. Here's Dr. Arden again.
What we can see is that the neurons of a person's brain that has suffered a lot of stress looks kind of like a tree in the winter. There's the neurons look kind of withered. There's not a lot of like little things sticking out to allow one branch to talk to another branch. It just really looks kind of like a barren tree in the winter. And then we look at the same person's brain the next day after they've taken ketamine, and the neurons in that person's brain look a lot more like a tree in the springtime. It's a lot more full, vibrant. There's more of the kind of like the stem sticking out, which allow that part of the brain to then send messages or communicate with other parts of the brain.
One disclaimer, this all assumes the use of ketamine in a medically supervised setting like Mindbloom or at a legal clinic where the dose and frequency of use is monitored. So how does this brain change translate into real life? Chelsea Tursevich, a psychiatric clinician in Mindbloom, explains what she sees in patients as they do ketamine sessions over time.
They're like, I feel better, I'm sleeping better, I can function, right? Whereas before maybe those things weren't happening.
Chelsea explains that for the average client, the improvements are clear but gradual.
And now they're like, oh, this thing that normally stresses me out or makes me angry or breaks me down didn't. Or I stopped myself, right? And there's this kind of aha moment for people where they're like, oh, something shifted. That was where I would say most people fall. A high percentage of people see remission of their symptoms or drastic improvement from maybe severe to mild in the first 6 sessions.
So let's get back to Steven's story. He's ready for his first Mindbloom session. He followed Mindbloom's at-home protocol. He took time off work. He set his intention with his Mindbloom coach. He prepared his ketamine lozenge to hold under his tongue until it dissolves. And he was careful not to eat beforehand.
So I had a room set aside that I could kind of, shut the shades and stuff. I had my blanket, my pillow, my lavender pillow spray. I set everything up. I had my audio track, my headphones, and, instructions for my husband to keep the dogs out and, just check on me every 15 minutes.
You hold the medicine for 7 minutes, then minute 5 to 10, the medicine starts making its way to the brain and the person starts experiencing ketamine.
That's Mindbloom's medical director, Dr. Leonardo Bando, or Dr. Leo.
Ketamine at the dose that we're using, one is sub-anesthetic, but also, even if it was anesthetic, it's not an anesthesia that obliterates your consciousness. You're still on, you're still alert and awake, you're still thinking.
The very first time, I'm sitting there and I remember it was comforting, honestly. It was comforting. It was kind of like having a warm blanket wrapped around you, which is kind of weird to say, but that's how it felt. I feel colors and I feel music, but it's just you kind of just roll with it.
Steven's giving us a sense of how the ketamine breaks your mind out of its normal cycle. And if you're depressed, that's a big deal because depression can send you down a hopeless rabbit hole of despair. But what if you could temporarily shut off that channel? Just go offline.
If you're able to go offline, that emotion is going to die off in a couple of seconds. Every emotion dies off in a couple of seconds. Let's say you're very upset and all of a sudden you see Barack Obama go by. You will totally forget about that emotion and your brain will go somewhere else. Now, people who have long-term depression, that loop will kick back in again because of how rigid those circuits are. So what ketamine will do is that will loosen that circuit. So not only you'll get a break from that loop, but you get a slightly looser circuit. So if you repeat that over time, it's possible that that circuit will just disappear. And if you fit in new positive loops, then you have a new habit, a habit of thinking positively, for example.
This is what happened to Steven. He felt himself go offline, leaving behind his familiar thought loops.
I came back better than ever. And the next thing I know, I could feel myself become one with the universe and then slowly come back to myself. So it was kind of like this sense of belonging to the universe as a whole and just being one with everything. It was probably one of the most mind-blowing, awe-inspiring experiences. And then came out of the session on my own after that. I felt so good. I've never felt so good in my entire life.
But everyone's ketamine experience isn't quite that dramatic. When Dana had her first ketamine session, it was a Sunday morning. The house was calm. Everyone was still in their PJs. The kids watched a movie on the couch. Dana's husband guarded the bedroom door so she could have some uninterrupted quiet.
I just sat and got myself calm and balanced and went into my session. And I felt very calm and relaxed, and I felt a little floaty, and I had my thoughts were just coming slowly, and I was just thinking about all sorts of different things. And it was just a really comfortable experience. I felt almost like my brain got to go on vacation.
Sometimes people's ketamine experiences are like Dana's, just pleasant and drifting. like meditating or semi-lucid dreaming. For others, they can be a lot more visual or accompanied by distinct physical sensations, more like Stephen. But I want to share a story of a ketamine experience that is totally different from both Dana and Stephen's and has really stayed with me. I'd like to introduce Seth Meyers. This is how he describes starting his ketamine therapy.
There is this sense of excitement but calm at the same time that comes on.
Seth lives in Illinois, not far from Chicago. He's been a firefighter and paramedic for 15 years. When Seth came to Mindbloom, he was experiencing intense anxiety from a devastating day on the job. I'll give you a little warning here. We're about to get into descriptions of really graphic trauma. Seth got called to a house where a father had attempted to murder both of his kids and himself. Seth discovered the dead body of a 10-year-old boy. The other child, a 6-year-old girl, survived, and Seth took her to the hospital. Her clothes looked just like the ones his own daughter wore. The experience haunted him.
I can replay the mom screams. I carried this kid outside just in my arms to the vehicle as friends were out in the front yard of the family, screaming, hysterical, dropping on their knees. It's those things start to play over and over in your head.
A gnawing anxiety began following Seth into every day of his life. He started drinking a lot. He knew something had to change. Weeks after the house incident, Seth tried Mindbloom.
So took the medicine and I just laid back and the music played and all that. And it was very relaxing. I got that weightlessness and, listening to the music. And it was you listen to the music from a perspective you've almost never heard music before. It just sounds so interesting and so different. And then eventually I started getting in that dreamlike state. I can see it in my head, but it's hard to describe. But it just kind of looked like a churning smoke.
Sometimes ketamine therapy can help people re-access traumatic memories from recently or decades ago and have a new experience, something that loosens the grip of trauma. For Seth, his first ketamine treatment brought him back to the house where his trauma originated. His eyes are closed, but he can see everything.
And now I'm standing in front of the house where this kid incident occurred, right? And I'm this is kind of what I'm here for. So I guess we're going into the house, And whether I want to go in the house, my brain's taking me in it. So we're going in the front door and the house is cleaned up and it looks normal. So I start checking the bedrooms in the house. People have asked if I've told the story. They're like, well, was any of this must have been scary, right? And there was zero fear in me whatsoever at all. It was I knew I was there, but I was watching from the observer that sits behind my brain and watches me all day long. So it was just my consciousness was watching what was happening.
This observer feeling is a key feature of these kind of re-accessing experiences. Now, Seth is able to separate from the feeling of the experience happening to him and can safely watch it unfold from here in the present.
I could see the family and everything. The insight that I pulled right then in that very moment was, this house will always be there, but I don't have to live here anymore. And I left the house, and to this very day, that is one of the top profound insights that resonates with me all the time, because I can use that for anything that's troubling me. It's okay, put that in the house. You have to live there. And I left that session. It was kind of you just left that all there. And now you don't have to live this every moment and every single day. You can just enjoy life. And man, that was powerful. And even talking about it now, I'm as much power as it carried then, even hearing it now, I'm that still is incredibly powerful.
Seth's story is an example of how ketamine therapy can be a kind of trauma repair, freeing us from the prisons of our past by re-experiencing them from a place of safety and compassion. After that first treatment, Seth continued doing sessions, and over the course of treatments, his crippling anxiety and panic attacks subsided. He doesn't live in that house anymore. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, what's the catch? So let's talk about the risks and potential side effects. I asked Dr. Leo to take me through them.
the effects of ketamine that are noticeable, they're only noticeable for about an hour. Then after that, it takes about maybe another hour for you to feel completely that your legs are under you, and you should definitely not drive.
You heard the doctor. Driving while under the influence of ketamine is a really bad idea, as are other activities like swimming or running that require coordination. Other short-term side effects can include increased blood pressure and heart rate, nausea, and drowsiness. Mindbloom offers prescription anti-nausea medication that works well for most people. People can sometimes feel anxious, fragile, or confused in the immediate aftermath of a session, so having downtime and good support is really important. Long-term ketamine use can lead to kidney or bladder issues, but those are mainly seen in cases of abuse and overuse. Mindbloom's protocols are designed to avoid these effects. They screen clients for medical issues that could make ketamine therapy unsafe, such as heart or kidney problems. They also screen for psychological issues, such as trauma and suicidal thoughts, ensuring that clients have the ongoing psychotherapy support they need to safely do ketamine treatment. Mindbloom also addresses physical safety with the peer treatment monitor, requiring that a trusted person is going to check on you to monitor safety. They also track the prescriptions to prevent people from abusing ketamine by getting multiple prescriptions or asking for refills too fast. Each client has a coach monitoring their progress. And then there's the question of what comes after treatments, a critical process we've mentioned called integration, which refers to how you incorporate the experience and its lessons into your daily life and start to build new practices and habits. Dr. Arden, the care delivery lead, told me how Mindbloom supports this part of the experience.
Ketamine and how it supports healing really has to relate to the integration process and the work that happens around taking the medicine. So you're not just having an experience and you wake up and go about your business and don't think about it again. There's a really intentional process that we have people follow when they're going through ketamine therapy.
After each session, people are asked to journal for 30 minutes as a starting point for integrating and making sense of the experience.
Look back on your intentions. If this was my intention going into this experience, and this is what came up for me. And then once you have this like bullet points of my experience was this for me as it relates to my intention, then we can work to see how do we take those bullet points and plug them into your daily life in some way so that you really kind of use those new narratives or those new mantras in your life.
When Stephen came out of his ketamine experience and started his integration process, nothing was the same.
I was a completely different person. And honestly, I felt like as if I was switched out of my body from the old Stephen to a completely new Stephen. And if you had told me that that's how it would have been, I would have laughed at you and been like, yeah, I don't think so. No medicine's going to do that. At the most, it'll probably just ease some of my symptoms. But it's been a game changer, a lifesaver, and more than I could have ever asked for.
And Dana felt the same way.
Immediately, I was doing better. And even my husband noticed, like I was wiping down the counters and I started dinner and I was doing things around the house that I really hadn't been doing in so long. So I'm really kind of reinventing myself at this point and kind of asking myself, like, do I even like to do that? I do enjoy my time with my kids immensely, and anything I can do with them is a joy and is making memories and trying to play catch up from some of the time that I spent depressed. I'm glad that I'm still here, and I'm glad that I can still step up and be the mom that I need to be. And that is, I can't put a price on that. It's just amazing.
And Stephen is also experiencing a renewed version of himself.
I'm anxiety free, I'm depression free, I'm migraine free, which is huge. But like when I look back at my first ketamine session and how I was before, I don't even recognize that person. I keep calling him the other Stephen because literally I don't know who that is. I don't know how I was getting through life the way that I was. And then I had that ketamine session and like that, it was a complete night and day change. It's been amazing and awesome, and I would not trade this for the world.
I know the darkness of depression. I've wanted to give up before. But Dana, Stephen, and Seth are reminders that no matter how dark the road of depression gets, how lost you feel, or how many antidepressants you've tried. There's still hope for a way back. I've never been one to believe things that sound too good to be true. I'm not here to tell you ketamine is a silver bullet, but for a lot of people, ketamine therapy has helped light a path out of the dark, even when all else failed. Maybe it could for you. If this episode got you curious about ketamine therapy, visit mindbloom.com to learn more. And if you think someone in your life could benefit from listening, we encourage you to share it with them. You never know, it could help them transform their life. Before we close, a disclaimer. Eligibility for Mindbloom treatment is determined by a licensed clinician. Make sure to discuss any medications you're currently taking and consult your provider before adjusting any prescriptions. Each client journey is different, and results of treatment may vary. As such, your experience might differ from those of the clients featured in this episode, and the opinions shared belong to those individuals. For more information about Mindbloom results and client testimonials, visit mindbloom.com/results. And for a complete understanding of Mindbloom's important safety information, visit mindbloom.com/safety-information.